afternoon, friends. It is Sunday. I am getting ready to have lunch and I just figured I would film a quick video. This shouldn't take me too long, but the reason I'm filming this video is because I'm a little bit curious. Hey, quit it. I'm a little bit curious how mood reading affected the overall makeup of my reading month, because normally I choose reads based on a whole bunch of arbitrary factors, most of them including, like the color of the cover. And this time I chose books based on my current want to read them. So I'm just a little bit curious if the average rating increased, or if it stayed the same, or if it got worse, and what conclusions we can draw from that. I'll film a little bit. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm hungry, but I'll film a little bit of a stats wrap up in a second after I finish tier ranking. But the main bulk of this video is going to be me tier ranking all the 33 books that I read in July. Here's my list. Let me explain my tiers real quick. So other people have fun with this, so I thought that I would have fun with it too. These quotes that we are using to tier rank, and first of all, these aren't just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 star. That's not really how I'm doing this tier ranking. It's more of a feeling that may or may not coincide with what rating I gave the book. So what I've got here are some of my favorite X-Files quotes, because I have been, oh wait, let me move it closer. I have been rewatching the X-Files for the last several months because I got Lindsay to watch the X-Files. She's been texting me and I was like, damn it, I gotta rewatch the X-Files. And also there's a podcast that's rewatching them. One of my favorite podcasts is rewatching X-Files. So any hoodle. So my tiers here, so I'll explain a little bit because probably a lot of you haven't seen X-Files or don't know it in as much detail as I do. So the first tier we've got here is I saw Elvis in a potato chip once. So this is a Mulder quote. In case you couldn't guess, he loves Elvis, and he's the one that believes, and Scully is the skeptic. So basically, I'm using this quote to indicate a level of transcendence. So like this is a joke that he throws off, but he's also like perfectly serious when he says it. This is from a later season episode, where he's being kind of glib, but also like he's serious. Like he loves Elvis, and if he saw Elvis in a potato chip, that would be a transcendent moment for him. So these are going to be books that sort of transcend normal boundaries of how much enjoyment I'm able to experience while reading. So this is a book that transcends. And then we have my heart. Actually, I couldn't fit the full quote on here. So the full quote of this is, "Dear Diary, today my heart leapt when Agent Scully suggested spontaneous human combustion." And so I had to shorten that a little bit. So this is going to be like, I really liked, oh my God, Pippin, go away. This is going to be, I really liked this book. I had a great time. No reservations. Highly recommend this. I think the quote's kind of self-explanatory. And then third category down. So the quote is, "I kissed you if you weren't so damn ugly." So this is a category meant to indicate books that I have complicated feelings for and maybe contradicting thoughts about. Just like Scully is not wanting to kiss Mulder while he is temporarily in the body of someone she is not attracted to. So complicated thoughts go in this category. Also spoilers for the X-Files. Okay, fourth category down, now we have Pippin back here. Hope he doesn't jump on me. It wasn't even real cream cheese, it was light cream cheese. So this is to indicate maybe an idea that just was not executed to its best capacity. Like the execution was just maybe not there, it was cheapened somehow. Because light cream cheese is bullshit. Okay, next category down. Please explain to me the scientific nature of the whammy. So that is a category for books where I'm skeptical of the logic and the thought process and the writing and the structure that went into it. So we've got some structural flaws here, basically. And then the last category is sure, fine, whatever. Pippin, stop! He's putting holes in my clothes. Oh my God, this cat. Okay, so sure, fine, whatever. And this isn't like the classic use of whatever, like could go either way. This is meant to indicate a depth, an extreme lack of enthusiasm. In fact, an almost antipathy towards the thing that you are talking about. So those are my categories. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so first I have Alewives, The Alewives, which is a cozy mystery that takes place in the Middle Ages, and it's about three women who decide to become alewives, and then they also solve a murder. So I had a great time with this book. It was a very satisfying, fun read. It was funny. It was historically satisfying. I learned things. It was just a good time overall. So I'm going to put it in my heart leapt when Agent Scully suggested spontaneous human combustion. Okay, so then we have our first category that is going to be I'd Kiss You If You Weren't So Damn Ugly, and that is Bad Gays, A Homosexual History. So this book was a good listen. I listened to it on audiobook, but it was also kind of flawed. So the premise of this book, and it's not one that I talked about in my reading vlogs. Sorry, I didn't vlog every book I read. That would have been torture for you and for me possibly. But so this one is a series of essays, and I think it's based on a podcast, which might be where a lot of the flaws are coming from, because podcasts are initially created, an episode at a time. So there isn't really a thought for the overarching, reasoning for it being collected together in a book. And I prefer my nonfiction to have a reason to be collected rather than just a random assortment. I would listen to a podcast if I wanted a random assortment. I want connection. Oh my God, Pippin's in goblin mode. I just know he's gonna fuck shit up. Okay, so this book is about ostensibly, Lily, stop! Oh my God, stop. This book is about, ostensibly, these two authors whose names I'm forgetting. They are British, and one of them narrates the audiobook himself, which he does a good job, except for the editor does a terrible job, because there was this one sequence in the book where he left in all of the takes. So he was just reading this line over and over again, and it was embarrassing. But anyway, audiobook is good otherwise. But I keep not saying what this book is about. So this book is an attempt to look at and sort of reclaim the bad gays of history. So the queer community has, historical gay people, queer people that it has claimed, like Sappho or Eleanor Roosevelt, or, people who did good and were gay or queer. They made significant positive outlook so that they are willing to be claimed. But the premise of this book is, let's reclaim the bad gays. Like, we're not getting the full picture if we are not looking at the gays that no one wants to claim because of the things that they did, either because they were straight up evil, which there are a lot of those in this book, or because they were very complicated and flawed. And there are a lot of those too. And more importantly, at least in the introduction, it says that the aim of this is because a lot of the queer people that are explored in this book are white and male. They are the ones shaping or part of the dominant narrative of what is a queer person, what is a gay person. They are the ones making those definitions because they are shaping the narrative as part of a group that has a lot more privilege than a Black person or a woman or a trans person or a non-binary person or other people who are not just white and gay. So the problem here is that I don't think they succeeded in that mission. They focused a lot because, again, I think it's because it was adapted from a podcast. Each individual chapter was good, but as a whole, they were not connected nearly enough for my liking. There was not any reaching back to that original thesis of here's what this person is contributing to the idea of being gay. They were just totally separate entities, and as a result, it makes it feel like the book is suffering from a lack of representation of women, people of color, trans people, people who are gender nonconforming, lesbians, bisexual people. Although there's a lot of bisexual men in here, there's only one bisexual woman. So anyway, those are my complicated feelings about the book. I learned a lot, and it was a good enough time reading it, listening to it, but it is flawed. So that's that one. Oh my God, this video is going to be an hour long if I don't speed up my talking. Oops, what the heck was that? Okay, next we've got the first Elvis book, Elvis and a potato chip book, and that is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang or Wong. Still don't know how to pronounce it. I should really look that up. Okay, so this book is a fantasy book. It's in the dark academia genre, supposedly, although I've read some stuff about why the author wrote it, and that was never the draw. It just happened to be set in that world, which is funny because that's, I just happened to read a dark academia book. That was not the draw. The draw was the rest of the book, which is the core idea of what she started writing about was, what if a minority in this world, in this city, entered a field where she was not supposed to be, where her minority were traditionally not present, and then learned other things on top of that, and the contradictions and the contrasting ideals of that, like what happens to her identity, what happens to her sense of self, what happens to the fate of this city when all of this stuff is brought to light. And so she's the first woman in this magical academy, basically, in this city that's protected by a magical barrier, and outside is a frozen wasteland that kills people. But this book was so good. The longer I'm away from it, the more that I remember it fondly. And also, I've since read a blog post about the author. I'll link it down below, about her process of writing it, which made me appreciate it all the more. So I highly recommend this one. And if you were waiting for the paperback, it is now available. I have already ordered it. It should be in my house on Monday. And today is Tuesday. Today's Sunday. I know what day it is. So that's Blood Over Brighthaven. Elvis and a Potato Chip, Transcendent. Okay, then we've got Breakfast of Champions. That is a Kurt Vonnegut. It is going in. My heart leapt when Scully said spontaneous human combustion. Did exactly what it wanted to do. It was funny, it was clever, it was sad. It did what it needed to do. Chain Gang All-Stars, same. Did what it wanted to do, was a very good read, was a depressing read, was a little disturbing. It meant to do all of those things. Then we have The Curse of Saints. Oh, by the way, if you don't know, Chain Gang All-Stars is a book about a semi-futuristic, maybe contemporary dystopian society where in the carceral system of this society, prisoners have the option of enrolling in this program where they are fighters. And if they fight for, I think it's 3 years without dying, they are then freed from their sentence. But meanwhile, it's not just fights, it's their whole lives are documented and played over TV and turned into reality television for consumption of the masses. So it's just got a lot of stuff going on, but it was juggled really well. And it was a good read, but it was depressing and intense. Okay, so then we've got, let's see, this is gonna go in the Sure Fine Whatever category. So that's The Curse of Saints. And this was my one and only DNF this month. I could not take it anymore. This book was not for me. And I honestly don't think it's for really that many people because it doesn't have good ratings from the people who have read it, and it hasn't been read very much. So it wasn't working. It wasn't working. So we're gonna move on. Okay, then I've got The Deep Sky, and we're gonna put that again in the second category. So this is a mystery suspense book set in space with a group of people who are on their way to colonize another planet. And it also has flashbacks to the main character's previous life before she was on the spaceship, detailing, the relationships aboard and her past with her mother and like what's going on with Earth. But the main focus is this mystery about who sabotaged the ship. And it was entertaining. It was perfectly competent. It was good. I liked it a lot. Okay, then we have episode 13. So this is a found footage in book form horror book about a reality TV crew who they hunt, they do paranormal investigations. The shtick with them is that there's a Mulder and Scully-esque married couple at the heart of the show where he's the believer and she's the skeptic, and it's her job to debunk what they find on the show. And if she can't debunk it, then the idea is, oh, it's really happening. But then it goes a lot further and gets real weird after that. That's just the beginning. So this book it just wasn't for me. So I think that I'm going to put it in this one. Like, if I were to approach somebody who loved this book, I would ask them to explain to me why they loved it. Just as Mulder is genuinely believing in this. I mean, he calls it the whammy jokingly, but in the episode that this is from, he's serious about what that means. And Scully's like, what are you talking about? So anyway, I would ask them to explain to me what is the appeal for this of you. I'm genuinely interested because it just was fine for me. It was just fine. I would have preferred the story go another direction. The author clearly didn't want to go that direction. Sometimes that's just how it works. Okay, then I read a series of novellas from one of those Amazon short story collections where they get famous authors to write stories along a theme. And this one was a science fiction exploration, mind-bending genre thing where they all did stories in that vein. And this first one here that's popping up, unfortunately, is one that I did not like. And that is Falling Bodies by Rebecca Roanhorse. Honestly, right now, I cannot even remember what this little novella / short story, whatever thing, was about. It is completely fallen out of my head. So we are going to do this. Because if I can't even remember what this book is about, it doesn't go any higher. I know I didn't like it. Oh wait, I've just remembered. And it was a failure. It did not do. It was shallow. It was silly. It was weird. It was boring. I didn't like the characters. We're gonna go from there. Okay, then we've got Sarah Pekkanin's Gone Tonight, which is a thriller about a woman and her daughter. They're both main characters. They both have POVs, and the mother has developed Alzheimer's at the beginning of the book, and the daughter is coming to terms with that. But then as things go on, you learn about their strange life and the secrets her mother may have been keeping from her, and things get a little weird. If you have read, what's that book called? It's right there. Karen Slaughter, the first book in this series, this is Girl Forgotten. I forget the name of the first book. Pieces of Her. If you've read that, it's very similar to that book. And honestly, I think Pieces of Her does it better. So I would just read that book. But this book, that book has a cult angle, a cult-ish angle, and like a crime angle that this one doesn't have. But otherwise, they're basically the same story. This book was perfectly fine. I gave it 3 stars. So I'm just going to say, though, that it's this one. It wasn't even real cream cheese. It was light cream cheese, because this is like a standard thriller that does nothing new. It's perfectly competent and it does the job, but is it the most satisfying thing you've ever put in your mouth? Okay, now we're at The Good House. So this one is tough because I gave this book 5 stars. But again, the tiers I'm making here are not necessarily related to my star ratings. And I think what I'm going to have to do... actually, I have to we're moving them in order. So I liked this better than Alewives. Let's say that. Okay. So Good House, I think, is just... I think if I ever reread it, I maybe would, but it's not transcendent for me. It's not transcendent. So, but it is at the top. Like, it does everything that it's supposed to do perfectly. It's just a perfect little book, but it doesn't transcend for me, if that makes sense. I don't know why I've chosen the categories this way. It's just the way it shook out. But that is an excellent book, by the way, about a woman who inherits a house from her grandmother, and she also inherits a history of like magic and spirits, and consequences of her family's past actions have come to rest on her and her son, who was killed. And the book goes back in time to show you his story and how he ended up dying, and then her dealing with the fallout 2 years later in this house where things start going very, very wrong. So it was a very good book, and I highly recommend it. Next up is A House with Good Bones. We are putting that. Hey, stop it, Pippin. God, he's chewing my pants while they are on my body. No. Where's the spray bottle? I don't want to get up. I don't want to get up. I don't want to get up. Okay. What was I doing? Oh, House with Good Bones. Okay, so I'm going to put that above Breakfast of Champions, 2 house books, and they're both horror. House with Good Bones was just a great time. I loved the characters. I loved the vibes. I loved all the weird science facts about bugs and birds. The story was short to the point. It was just very well done. Great book. So it's going up in this category. I can tell you right now, I had a pretty good reading month, so nearly all of my reads are going to be in this category. So maybe I already have my answer. Next up is How It Unfolds, and I'm going to put this right here. So I did only give this 4.5 stars, but when I stopped to think about the point of this story and just the ending, like the ending part of it, that's really just like, this is the most successful story in this collection because it did exactly what The Brief asked for, which was to be a little mind-bending and mind imagination opening. And it really does new things with science fiction that I've never seen before. And it did that thing that only a very rare book can do for you, where it like literally makes you sit back and go, whoa, I've never thought about that before. And then it just ties some things together, and it was just very meaningful and a very, very successful story. So even if it wasn't like my favorite characters or my favorite writing, sorry, Pippin is playing with, this cat is gonna kill me. Even if it wasn't like, hey, stop. Do you want me to put you in the bathroom? Okay, so let's just move on. The 2 transcendent books so far. Okay, next up is If Found, Return to Hell. This is a novella. It's actually, don't let the appearances fool you as it fools everyone else. This is not a horror book. This is a cozy fantasy book. It is a cozy fantasy novella. So, cozy fantasy fans, this book is for you. It was funny. It was cute. It successfully pulls off the second person point of view, which is very hard to do. The characters were so lovable. I wanted more. The only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because I wanted it to be a full novel. So this is going, let's see here. Okay, Just Out of Jupiter's Reach by Nnedi Okorafor. I don't know if the 2 N's are pronounced or not. But either way, this is an author that I knew going into reading this is not for me. Like, I know there are people that like her stuff because she keeps making it, and I keep seeing people talk about it, and I'm not going to make the mistake of thinking that those people are stupid or that they don't know what they're talking about, even though I cannot imagine liking one of these books and thinking what she's doing is interesting or entertaining. I just bounced so hard off of this author's ideas and writing. This is probably actually the most successful I've ever had with one of her pieces of writing. The worst was in, there are these compilation Star Wars books for the 50th anniversary of each Star Wars movie. And she wrote, they're really cute. So they get authors, 40 authors for each book. Maybe it's the 40th anniversary, not 50. I can do math. They get 40 authors to pick another character in one of the Star Wars movies and write a scene or a short story from their perspective, like away from the main narrative. And it's really fun to read through those books because it's like watching the movie, but from the perspective of the background characters. So anyway, it's really fun. But she had a story in the first book, A New Hope collection, where she writes a story from the perspective of the Dianoga, which is the trash monster in the first movie when they're stuck in the compactor with the monster. It was one of the worst things, genuinely one of the worst things I've ever read in my entire life. So anyway, long story short, I'm gonna say it's gonna go here because I didn't hate it as much as I've hated her stuff in the past, and I didn't think it was as stupid as I thought most of her other stuff has been for me. So it's gonna go there. Okay, next up is The Long Game. This was just really cute. I'm gonna put it there. It's basically a story about an alien race on another planet, which humans have come not to colonize. Maybe. I don't think they live on planet. They're there basically to take resources from this planet, and the native species is very short-lived. They're like octopuses, basically, like how they only live for like a year or so. But it's from the perspective of one of these little aliens, and they take it into their mind that they're not going to die early. They're not going to die young. They're going to find out why their species only lives so long, and they are going to live longer. So it was cute. It was really cute. Okay. Next, we've got Alana Andrews, Magic Triumphs. This was a really good end to the series. I've talked before about how this is just not my favorite series of Alana Andrews, but you know, this was a good ending. So we're gonna put that there. Next up, we've got Mapping the Interior, which is a horror novella by Stephen Graham Jones about a young boy who starts believing that the ghost/spirit of his dead father is sort of coming back to life in the bowels of his manufactured home, and that his family is now, something must be happening, something that they might be in danger. And it was a little mind-bendy, a little gross, and very heartfelt. Okay. Mrs. Plansky's Revenge. This was a cute story about, it's like, honestly, I don't even know how to classify it in terms of genre. It's not a mystery, so it's not, you can't say it's a cozy mystery because it's not a mystery. It's not really a thriller, although if cozy suspense, cozy thriller was a category, maybe that would be the category. So Mrs. Plansky is an elderly woman. She's in her 70s. Her husband has died. She lives in a house all on her own in Florida. Her children are kind of bums and never call her and never talk to her. And she is the victim of a grandparent scam by the other main character, whose name Ninu, I think is his name, Ninu, who lives in Romania, and his family, his uncle runs a crime family, and they have gotten Ninu to learn English solely so he can pretend to be the grandsons who are out of touch with these lonely old people, and pretend to be the grandsons and get money. And all of her money is stolen by this one phone conversation. So she decides to get it back on her own because the FBI will not do it for her. And so she goes to Romania, and it was good. It was fun. And unexpectedly, some sexy things happened at the end. So if you're like one of those people who enjoys stories about older people getting to live full lives that include sex and romance and like, you know, they're not just waiting to die. You know, they're people, they're just old. So it was good. It was fun. We're gonna put it at the end here. Okay. So we're like, just got these left. We're in down to one row. Okay, so The Neighbor Favor. So this one, I'm going to say I have complicated feelings about, because some things it did really well and some things it did not execute memorably or like in an original way. It didn't feel like it had much of a voice. So I'm not putting it in the light cream cheese because I feel like that implies a generic sensibility that this book didn't have. It just wasn't quite there yet. And it didn't like perfectly work for me, but like it indicates promise. There's promise there. So I'm putting it here. This is a You've Got Mail retelling. Not really. It's You've Got Mail inspired. The situation is, you know, they meet online, and then one of the participants in the relationship knows that they met online and the other doesn't for most of the book, and then they fall in love. He's a writer. She works in publishing. It's cute, but again, not a perfect read for me, so it's going in the complicated feelings category. Next up, Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. I still haven't rated this book. I still haven't written a review. I still don't know how I feel about it. So of course it is going, I'm going to put it here though, in the I'd Kiss You If You Weren't So Damn Ugly category because of my complicated unknown feelings that I do not understand quite yet. And that's where it's going to stay for now. It was very interesting, very absorbing, very distressing. Not sure how I felt about the ending, not sure how I felt about some of the characters and like what their purpose was in the story. So all in all, I just have a lot of complicated feelings that they're still swirling around and they have not solidified into opinions yet. So it's going to go in this category. All right, Rise of Empire. So this was just a good fun time. Good fun time. I'm gonna put it here at the end because this is a 2-book bind up of books 3 and 4 in the series. I really liked book 3. Book 4 was just fine. So it's gonna go at the end there. Okay, then we've got The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. So this did not get quite transcendent for me, but it was so good. And I'm gonna put it right behind The Good House. I feel like this is one of those series that the more it sits with me, the more I reread, the more I'm gonna love it. And it's gonna be like a favorite series. But for now, it's brand new read, brand new feelings. It's gonna stay in just a really good book category, just behind The Good House, which was a full 5 stars. Okay, then we have another one of the, Amazon short stories, Slow Time Between the Stars by John Scalzi. This was fine. It doesn't go in any of these categories. It's gonna go right here at the back because I don't think that it did anything wrong. It was fine. Just wasn't my favorite thing he's ever written. And it wasn't my favorite thing in the collection, which surprised me because I thought that it would be, because I love John Scalzi, but it's just gonna go in this category. Perfectly enjoyable read. Okay, now here we go. If I'm not mistaken, I think it might be the last in the Transcendent category, and that is The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez, actually, and I'm gonna put this up here. So this was the best book that I read all month. It is probably gonna go in my top books of the year. I don't know why people are sleeping on this book. I feel like everyone should just read it because it's so good. The way that he does new things with language and with the structure of the book and the way he plays with storytelling, that alone would make this book worthy of reading. But he also gets every other aspect of the story right. He does so good. The characters, the dialogue, the overall arc of the story, the themes, everything about it was perfect. And there is a reason that it is in the Transcendent category, that I saw Elvis in a potato chip when I read this book. I loved it. And I'm definitely checking out his other book, his debut. Something about birds. I can't remember the name right now. So good. Just read it. Just go read it. Okay, so then we've got Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. So this was my second T. Kingfisher. House of Good Bones was a horror, cozy horror-ish. This is a darker-ish fairy tale sort of book. It's not well, actually, it kind of is a retelling. It's not a retelling. It's not. It's a play on the Sleeping Beauty story. There we go. But instead of Sleeping Beauty being the main character is a human named Toadling, who is no longer quite human because she was kidnapped at birth by the fairies and replaced with a changeling. And she was then, tossed into a pond in Fairy, and she just happened to be adopted by these creatures that, infused her with their magic and named her Toadling. And then, after she grew up a little, she was assigned to go back to the real world and deal with a situation that had cropped up. And at the beginning of the book, when we meet her, she is guarding a tower that is covered in vines where a beautiful girl sleeps. So there, it unfolds from there. I just really enjoyed this book. I haven't read any of her other fantasy. I've only read her horror before, but I feel like this was a good first one because other people say it's not even the best one. So the fact that I liked this one so much indicates that I'm going to love her other fantasy going forward. So we're going to put this here in this category. I'm going to put it probably just before Alewives in terms of enjoyment. Okay, home stretch. So we've got Christina Lauren, The True Love Experiment. This one I wanted to like more than I actually liked it. I have largely, my opinions about it have fallen out of my head, even though I just read this at the beginning of July. It was fine. It was fine. But I think I had a problem with it that was pretty big, and I can't remember what that problem was. Let me sit here for a little bit and think about it. It was like an ethical thing. It was like wasn't consent. It was something else. Oh, I remember. Okay. It really bothered me that the ending felt like a replay of another book that I had read that was published 2 years earlier that the authors most definitely would have been able to read, and I feel like they should have known and done something different. It just didn't quite hit. Complicated Feelings. It's gonna go in Complicated Feelings, but it's gonna go behind, because again, like, I rated this 4 stars, and this one I rated 3 and 3. So it's not rating here that we're doing. It's my feelings about the story in the book and how successful it was, not star level enjoyment. I don't know. Okay, Void. This one surprised me. So this is Veronica Roth of Divergent fame. I was so pissed off at the ending of that series, and I thought it was so terrible. I have not read anything else from this author except for she did one other short story in another collection that I just thought was fine, but not really that good. But I actually really enjoyed this. So I would say maybe here. So the premise of this one is it is a murder mystery, but that wasn't why I liked it so much, because it takes place on this long hauler. I forget what they call it in the novella, but it's basically she works on a ship that its only journey is back and forth from Earth to another solar system. I want to say Centauri. I can't remember for sure. But because of time dilation, she essentially, and anyone else who stays on board, becomes a time traveler and like a relic of the past. And she stays on this ship while the world outside the ship goes zoom, 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 zoom. And like in the span of a week, she's traveled forward in time, and something that was important and relevant off-world, if she were, the world she grew up on, is now ancient history. Well, not ancient history, but it's now history. And just the way that the story played with the idea of time and aging and history moving on without you and community was really interesting. And it surprised me how much I liked this. So maybe she's finally like maturing as an author, and maybe I can like go check out some of her stuff. I don't know. I feel very conflicted about Veronica Roth. Some of her books have seemed intriguing to me, but I was like, I don't trust you after what you did. So maybe I can trust her again. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, then we've got Wildfire by Alana Andrews. This is just a really fun series, so I'm going to put it here. Third book in the Hidden Legacy series. Last book that we're in Nevada is a POV. Nevada. I know people in Nevada get angry if you say Nevada, but she's not a state, she's a human woman, so I'm going to say Nevada. And then I'm actually reading the next books. Well, there's a novella in between, and then the next book is Sapphire Flames. That's the first full book in her sister Catalina's trilogy, and I'm really liking it. And I think I'm liking the Catalina books more than I liked the Nevada books. So, last 3. Okay, The Will of the Many was so good. So we're gonna put that, oh, this is tough. Because these top three were all good for different reasons. I love the characters and the world and just like the general vibe of this, but the world building and the scope of that world and the plot structuring and just like the way the ending opened everything up for the future, like, I'm just gonna leave it here. I'm just gonna leave it here because emotions for me are more important at the moment, but this was really good. These both got 4.5 stars. Although I think I rounded this one up to 5. I don't know. It's fine. Okay. Okay, then we got 2 more. So the next one is Yellowface. So this one, I'm gonna put it in here just because of how entertaining it was. But I did have, like, it's a thorny book. Like, you can't just read it, you have to think about it. You have to, and like the way that she writes about, like, it's an unreliable narrator, but you have to sort of guess which parts are the parts that the author is endorsing and which parts are the author is not, and which parts the author is just introducing for chaos. Like, it's a very not straightforward book. A lot of people are portraying it as straightforward, but I don't think that it is. I think that R.F. Kuang is fucking with everybody, and I feel like even if June, the main character, is a terrible person because she steals her dead best friend's manuscript and passes it off as her own, and then there's issues of racism and classism and privilege and lying and theft, but also she has moments where she also has insight into the things that are wrong, even as she's benefiting from them. So not everything she says is wrong. So it's complicated. So I'm gonna put it there. Actually, no, that's good. That's good. I'm gonna leave it. I'm just not gonna overthink it. Okay, and then my last book on here, which was also the first book that I read this month, is You Mean the Nightmare Painter. It is probably gonna go right there. I wouldn't say it's transcendent. It was just a fun, romantic, imaginative, adventurous good time. Candy for your brain with some underlying emotional pathos that makes it sweet and a little bit more poignant. And it was great. It was 5 stars. So this is how we're looking out. So again, I don't know if this is typical for me. I want to say that it is. The majority of books that I read are 4-star reads, in that category where I just had a great time. This is great. But because of the way I've structured it here, where like this isn't a 5-star read, these 2 are 5-star reads, but they're still in this second category. These were 4.5, then I might round up to 5. This was 4.5, this was 4.5. Like, I've made life difficult for myself. But anyway, you can see here, I had a pretty great month. All of these books, the majority of the books that I read are in these first 2 categories, and 3 transcendent books in 1 month, I would say is pretty good. And then the majority of books I read are just straight up 4 and 5s. I read some interesting books that had some flaws. This book is the yucky category for me because it's just there, and then it goes away and you forget it. And then these books were interesting failures. And then these books were not good at all. So really, I feel like this is a success because the 2 categories that are my least favorite things to read from, which is generic nonsense and stuff that I feel antipathy towards, like that I'm actively resentful of, there was only 3. And these, like I said, these were interesting, not perfect. This was a 3-star read, 3.5. This is a 2.5, 3. So I think I had a really good reading month. Again, I will follow this up with some stats, see if I can make some sense of other months in this year and how they shook out compared to this month. And that will not be feelings based. That will be, ratings based. And I'm also going to maybe do like, did I read more? Did I read less? Including book numbers and page count, because, I read a bunch of long books here, Like this one was long, 500 pages, 500, like almost 600, 500, 500. This was like 650. So there were a lot of long books in here as well. Yeah, and this one, oh yeah, Our Share of Night was really long. So I feel like, I don't know, we'll see. You'll find out sooner than I will. Have a good rest of your afternoon. Afternoon, friends. It is once again Sunday, a week later. I haven't wanted to actually finish this video, even though I have wanted to finish it, because it involves thinking and like doing math and effort instead of just, blah, with no preparation, which is what I normally do on these videos. In case you were wondering, that's my process, is improv. So I do have some statistics for you, and I'll pop up relevant graphics when available if I'm not too lazy to do that as well, because I'm really wanting to take a nap right now. But anyway, so what I've done here is like the most basic statistical analysis you can possibly do without any knowledge of actual statistics, because I've never taken a statistics class in my life. But I just wanted to compare and see mathematically, is there a trend on my reading normally on how I do things? Like, what's my average rating? How many pages do I read? How many books do I read? Is there a normal for me? And if so, did mood reading affect that normal? So, I mean, it's only a 7-month set of data here, but we'll see. Well, I mean, I already know the answers. Not sure what I'm going to say about them yet, but I do know that, because I put the statistics together, but we'll see. Okay, so first let's go through January through June, okay? Just so you guys can get a normal idea of my activities. And I'm gonna go category by category and then sum it all up at the end. So first category is books read. So in January, I read 32 books, okay? So that's pretty good. It is the second lowest amount of books that I've read all year in a month. Next one I've got February is 33, okay? So we're seeing a pattern here. In March, I read 31, so that's the lowest, actually. That is the lowest amount of books I read in a month, is March. In April, I read a whopping 38. Keep in mind there's comics in there, but I read 38 books in April, so that was my biggest month by far. And then in May, I read 34, average-ish, a little on the high end. And then in June, I read 36. So April and June were my biggest reading months in terms of actual number of books, which honestly, like, I don't think that is probably the best statistic to be looking at. Although it's sort of interesting to do it, and it's satisfying to say, oh, I read 38 books in April. But I think a more meaningful number would be page count in terms of quantity. So we'll get to that second. So with all of that, we're looking 32 to 38 books a month is normal. Okay, so what did I do in July? July, I read 33. So, I mean, like right in the middle there, it didn't change. It was the same. My reading output did not change because I was mood reading, which that makes sense. My speed is gonna be the same no matter what, especially now that I barely watch TV anymore, which is wild. If you would have told my even 5 years ago self that I barely watch TV anymore, she would not have understood. She would have said, "Are you okay?" That's a topic for another day. Okay, so that's books read. Now let's go to which I think I've already told you, I think is the more meaningful number, which is the amount of pages read. So in January, I read 10,606. In February, I read 11,349. And in March, I read 12,677. So March is actually the month where I read the most. So even though I only read 31 books, I don't know, I'm air quoting that. I mean, I read 31 books. So even though I read 31 books, and it's the lowest number of books throughout this month span, I actually read the most pages. And I guarantee you that's because I read A Day of Fallen Night that month, which is one of the biggest books I've read this year. So that is the biggest page count by month. And then in April, I read 12,276. I think that is the second biggest. So March and April, in terms of quantity, are my biggest as of right now. Oh wait, I lied to you, sorry. April was the third biggest. Yeah, April was the third biggest, March was the second, and the actual biggest month I read was 13,169, which is in May. Sorry. So I read the most in terms of quantity in May with 34 books, which is 1,000 pages over what I read in March. Fine. So we're looking at between 10,000 and 13,000 is the range of pages that I normally read in a month. And in July, I read 11,028. So again, on the lower end of that spectrum, but within the range of normality. Like if we were thinking that by me choosing the books I was in the mood for, that I would read more, the answer is no, I did not. I actually read a little bit less because 12,000 more of these books were in that range than under. You know what I mean, fuck. Now let's look at number of DNFs. So on the other end of the spectrum, am I choosing books that I am not finishing, that I can't get through? Does that affect my month? How many DNFs in a month to be considered a good month? And did I have less DNFs overall, to make a difference that's visible while I was mood reading? So in January, I DNF'd 32 books, 2 of those I DNF'd. In February, I DNF'd 5 books, which is my biggest month. And I read 33 books that month, so 33 of those I DNF'd. In March, I read 31, and 3 of those were DNFs. So we're looking 2, 3, 5. In April, I DNF'd 3 books out of 38. And then in May, I DNF'd 4 books out of 34. So again, we're in the range. So our January is my lowest month. And that's maybe not even significant. We could probably write January off because I wasn't DNFing in January, really. I think I started at the end of the month. The last week and a half is when I started DNFing, and both of those DNFs came at the end of January. So maybe there were books earlier in the month I would have DNF'd. I don't know. I didn't look at that data. So where was I? Oh, May, I DNF'd 4 books out of 34. In June, I DNF'd 1 book out of 36. So I'm thinking that we're not going to get much out of this little experiment because I also DNF'd 1 book in July. Although June's was 1 out of 36 and July's was 1 out of 33. But if anything, that's a marker in favor of mood reading. I wasn't mood reading in June, and I had less DNFs proportionally in June than in July. So I think that's not a reliable way of looking at it. But I still think it's interesting that one of my lowest DNF months did come when I was mood reading. The others were in June and January. And then the other months were 3, 4, 5. So I don't know. Somebody who's better at statistics would probably have more to say about this. Oh my God, I can't believe I've been blathering for 8 minutes and 47 seconds. Sorry, I'll try to go quicker. And then the last thing that I looked at was average rating. So I feel like this is really where we're gonna see it if there is a difference. So in January, I read all the average of the books I read was 3.86. In February, it was 3.79, which is the lowest. So in terms of the books I was reading and enjoying, February was a stinker. Although 3.79 is my average rating as a whole on Goodreads. So this is actually the most representative of my reading as a whole, if you care about that sort of thing. In March, I got above 4.18 was my average rating. In April, and this is the highest month in terms of like enjoyment or star rating, I did a 4.29. 4.29. In May, I was at 3.59. And then in June, I was at 3.88. Okay. So I've got a 3 point, 3 point, 4 point, 4 point, 3 point, 3 point. So most of these are 3 point something. Lowest being 3.59. So that was my stinkiest month. July is a 4.0. So I don't know. Can we tell anything from that? I had 2 reading months, March and April, where I was above a 4, significantly above a 4, 4.18, 4.29, and I was just a standard 4.0. I don't know. So is there a difference? I think maybe it helped me boost it a little. Like I was within the range of normal for myself, 4.0, but it was on the higher end when mostly it's 3 point something. So I guess maybe it did boost it a little. But again, that's because we're looking at it. If somebody looked at these statistics as like a group on their own, July would not stand out. It's in the middle. It's in the middle to lower end in terms of pages read, and it's in the middle in terms of book read. I mean, but this experiment, it did nothing. I think I'd need more data. I think I'd need like 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe years of data for my average month, and then I could like add up the average rating for non-mood reading months, and then I could add up the average rating for like mood reading months, and that would maybe be more telling if there was a difference. But for now, we're not seeing much. So aren't you glad you spent 10 minutes watching this last part of the video? Anyway, I don't know when I'm going to mood read again. Maybe in December. I don't know. We'll see. I always like have these grand plans for December that never come to pass. That's traditionally the month when I have like struggled to finish books, when I have wanted to DNF. So this year I would actually DNF them instead of just wanting to DNF them. It's when I've planned to read many, many books and then ended up just not reading them at all, and then not knowing when I'm ever going to get to them. So it might happen in December, just to like, so I don't have to worry about hitting a TBR when things are crazy in the holidays and work and all that stuff. Work is always, December's the worst month for me in terms of my job. So it's just like, whatever. Anyway, if you've made it this far, you know, maybe leave like a little graph emoji down below so I know how many of you stayed to watch this stupid amateur statistical analysis. And I will see you soon. Farewell.